Florida didn't just lose control, it renamed the loss. What the United States faced in Florida wasn't confusion or chaos. It was capacity, and the system recognized it immediately. Florida mattered because it was supposed to be simple: land to expand into, people to remove or absorb, borders to straighten. But Florida didn't behave like a frontier. It behaved like a refuge. By the early 1800s, Africans escaping slavery were not just hiding there. They were settling. They were farming. They were organizing beyond U.S. law. The Seminoles didn't absorb these Maroons as property. They treated them as allies, not symbolically, operationally. This alliance functioned because both groups were under pressure from the same system. The United States needed land and labor. Slavery required recovery of fugitives. Expansion required removal of native control. The Seminoles and Black Maroons responded with rational cooperation. They shared terrain knowledge. They coordinated defense. They exchanged intelligence. They defended land together. This wasn't folklore. It was logistics. And it created something the United States could not tolerate: a multiracial political space operating outside its categories. This is where John Horse matters. Not as a hero, not as a biography, as proof. John Horse operated between worlds the United States insisted could not coexist. He translated languages, yes, but more importantly, he translated strategy. He moved between Seminole leadership and Black fighters. He negotiated. He coordinated. He carried information. His existence alone collapsed the logic of the system. He wasn't enslaved. He wasn't removable. He wasn't legible under U.S. racial law. That terrified the state more than gunfire ever could. Because the United States was not facing rebels, it was facing political actors. Once that capacity became clear, escalation followed. Troops flooded Florida. Resources were poured in. Campaigns were renamed, reorganized, and justified as necessary order. Then came Dade County. The defeat wasn't just military. It was symbolic. U.S. forces were routed by an alliance they had refused to recognize as legitimate. So the loss had to be contained. The land was renamed. The story was reframed. Memory was inverted. Dade County doesn't mark the beginning of conflict. It marks the system trying to explain away failure. This pattern isn't unique. Whenever enslaved people and indigenous nations aligned, the response followed the same arc: denial of capacity, escalation of force, renaming of defeat. Haiti, Maroon Wars, Indian Territory, Reconstruction. The threat was never violence alone. It was cooperation outside control. The Seminoles terrified the United States because they exposed a flaw in the design. Freedom didn't have to look like assimilation. Resistance didn't have to look like chaos. It could look like organization. And when systems face that truth, they don't just fight it, they rewrite it. The renaming tells you everything. The fear came first, the story came after.